The champagne tower collapsed in slow motion. Crystal glasses tumbled across white linen as Min-jun's ex-girlfriend, Yuna, stumbled backward, her designer heel catching on the hem of her dress. She'd had too much to drink. That much was obvious from the way she'd been circling my husband all evening like a predator who couldn't accept that her prey had escaped. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there from the moment we'd arrived at this garden party, celebrating the merger between Min-jun's organization and the Busan faction. Yuna had been invited by someone, probably one of Min-jun's lieutenants who didn't know better, or maybe one who knew exactly what they were doing. Jae-won, Min-jun's hand found the small of my back, his touch grounding me as it always did. Are you feeling all right? We can leave if the baby. I'm fine, I said, though the truth was more complicated. At 7 months pregnant, everything felt like an ordeal. Standing too long, sitting too long, existing while another human grew inside you, pressing against your lungs and making simple breathing a conscious effort. But I wasn't about to give Yuna the satisfaction of seeing me weak. She recovered from her stumble, laughing too loudly at something one of the younger members said. Her eyes kept drifting toward us, calculating. I'd heard the stories about her and Min-jun 3 years together before I came into the picture. 3 years of her thinking she'd be the one to legitimize his empire, to become the queen of his criminal enterprise. Except Min-jun had never wanted a queen who reveled in violence. He'd wanted someone who reminded him that humanity still existed, even in his world of blood debts and territorial disputes. She's drunk, I observed quietly. She's dangerous, Min-jun corrected, his jaw tightening. Stay close to me. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. One of the Busan representatives approached, pulling Min-jun aside for what was clearly meant to be a private conversation. My husband glanced at me, conflicted, and I waved him away. Go, I'll be right here. I should have followed him. I should have ignored propriety and stayed glued to his side. Instead, I wandered toward the pool area, drawn by the relative quiet away from the party's center. The evening air was cooler there, and I pressed a hand to my swollen belly, feeling our daughter kick against my palm. Does he know? Yuna's voice cut through my moment of peace. I turned slowly, keeping my expression neutral. She stood at the edge of the patio, swaying slightly, her perfect makeup unable to hide the rage simmering beneath her composed exterior. Know what? That you trapped him. She moved closer, each step deliberate despite the alcohol in her system. That you got pregnant on purpose to lock him down. Do you think I'm stupid? You were nobody, a bookstore clerk he met by accident, and suddenly you're carrying his heir. I'd heard this accusation before, whispered behind hands at gatherings I wasn't supposed to understand. The truth was simpler and somehow more unbelievable. Min-jun and I had fallen in love. Not the dramatic, explosive kind you see in films, but the quiet, certain kind that feels like coming home. What Min-jun and I have is none of your concern. Everything about him is my concern. Her voice rose, and I saw heads turning our way. I spent 3 years building my place in his world, 3 years proving I could handle the life. Then you show up with your innocent act and your fake gentleness, and suddenly I'm nothing. Yuna, you're drunk. Let me call someone to take you home. I don't need your pity. She was in front of me now, close enough that I could smell the champagne on her breath, see the tears threatening to ruin her mascara. You stole my life. You stole everything I worked for. You can't steal what was never yours. It was the wrong thing to say. I saw it in the way her expression shifted, the last vestiges of control evaporating. Her hand shot out, connecting with my shoulder, not hard enough to truly hurt, but enough to make me step backward. Except there was nothing behind me but the pool. The water hit me like a wall of ice. My body reacted instinctively, arms flailing as I went under, the weight of my pregnancy making me sink faster than I should have. Panic seized my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but feel the terrible pressure of water closing over my head while my baby kicked frantically inside me, as terrified as I was. I broke the surface, gasping, my wet clothes dragging me down. My lungs burned. My legs wouldn't work right. Someone was screaming, maybe me, maybe someone else. Then I went under again. Through the distorted water, I saw shapes moving, heard muffled shouts. My vision started to darken at the edges, and all I could think was, not my baby. Please, not my baby. Strong hands grabbed me, hauling me upward. I emerged from the water coughing and choking, barely aware of being pulled onto the concrete deck. Someone rolled me onto my side. Water poured from my mouth and nose. Jaewon, look at me. Min-jun's voice cut through the fog. His hands were on my face, my shoulders, checking for injuries with a gentleness that contradicted the absolute terror in his eyes. The baby, I managed to gasp. Min-jun, the baby. SHH, we're getting you to a hospital, right now. You're going to be fine. Both of you are going to be fine. But his voice cracked on the last word, betraying his fear. I became aware of chaos around us, raised voices, someone crying. Through my water-blurred vision, I saw Yuna being restrained by two of Min-jun's men, her face a mask of horror as she realized what she'd done, what she'd almost done. It was an accident, she was saying over and over. I didn't mean, I just pushed her a little. Min-jun went completely still beside me. When I looked at his face, I saw something that made my blood run colder than the pool water. This wasn't the man I'd married. This wasn't the man who brought me tea in the mornings and read parenting books in secret, trying to prepare for fatherhood. This was the Don, the man who'd built an empire on fear and respect in equal measure. Take her to the car, he said quietly, his hand still protective on my shoulder. We'll deal with this after Jaewon is safe. But I saw his other hand, hidden from view by his body, make a gesture to one of his lieutenants. A specific gesture I'd seen once before when someone had betrayed his trust. It meant, make arrangements. Min-jun, I started, but another cough racked my body. Don't talk, save your strength. He lifted me into his arms with surprising ease, ignoring my protests about being too heavy. Someone call Dr. Kang. Tell him we're coming and that if anything happens to my wife or daughter, I'll burn his entire hospital down around him. As he carried me toward the waiting car, I caught one last glimpse of Yuna. She'd stopped struggling, stopped protesting. She just stood there, staring at us with an expression of dawning comprehension. She'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. In Min-jun's world, there were rules. You could betray him, that was business. You could challenge him, that was ambition. But you didn't touch his family. You didn't threaten his wife. You didn't put his unborn child at risk. Whatever happened next, Yuna had signed her own fate the moment she pushed me into that pool. The hospital lights were too bright. Everything was too bright, too loud, too much. Nurses moved around me with practiced efficiency, attaching monitors and checking vitals while Dr. Kang, a man who I knew owed Min-jun several favors involving disappeared medical records, performed an ultrasound with hands that trembled slightly. Min-jun stood in the corner, his suit still damp from where he'd held me. He hadn't said a word since we'd arrived, just watched with those dark eyes that revealed nothing. But I knew him well enough to read the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers curled and uncurled at his sides. The baby's heartbeat is strong, Dr. Kang announced, and I felt something in my chest unclench. But Mrs. Park, you've had a significant shock. I want to keep you overnight for observation. Any signs of distress, any cramping, any bleeding. I understand. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Dr. Kang continued talking, explaining monitoring protocols and risks, but I'd stopped listening. Through the examination room door, I could see two of Min-jun's men standing guard. Not unusual, he was always careful about security. But there was something different about their posture tonight, something alert and anticipatory. They were waiting for orders. When the medical staff finally left us alone, Min-jun crossed the room and took my hand. His thumb traced circles on my palm, a gesture of comfort that seemed at odds with the coldness still present in his expression. What are you going to do to her? I asked quietly. What needs to be done? Min-jun. She nearly killed you. His voice was flat, matter-of-fact. She nearly killed our daughter. In my world, there are consequences for that. I wanted to argue, wanted to be the voice of mercy and reason, the humanity he claimed to love in me. But when I closed my eyes, all I could see was water closing over my head, feel the panic of not being able to breathe, the terror that my baby might die because I'd been careless enough to turn my back on a drunk, jealous woman. "I need to know what you're planning," I said instead. He studied me for a long moment, and I saw the internal struggle play out across his features. Min-jun had always tried to keep me separate from the darker aspects of his business. I knew what he was, what he did, but he'd constructed careful walls between his two worlds. Between the man who ordered executions and the man who held me during thunderstorms because I was afraid of the sound. "Her family has connections to the Inchin syndicate," he said finally. "If I kill her outright, it starts a war we can't afford right now, not with the Busan merger still fresh. But if I do nothing, I look weak. People will think they can target you without consequences. So what's the middle ground?" His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "There isn't one, not really, which is why I've made arrangements for her to disappear." "Disappear where?" "Does it matter?" It did and it didn't. I tried to imagine Yuna's fate. Exile somewhere far from Seoul, maybe Thailand or the Philippines, stripped of her connections and identity, forced to start over as nobody in a place where Min-jun's reach couldn't officially touch her, but his reputation would ensure she never found peace. Or maybe something worse. Maybe Min-jun was lying to spare me the details. "She was drunk," I heard myself say. "She made a terrible mistake, but nothing." Min-jun's grip on my hand tightened. "Jaewon, you have a beautiful heart. It's one of the things I love most about you. But there are people in this world who see kindness as weakness. Yuna is one of them. She's been circling ever since we got married, looking for an opening, a way back into my life. Tonight wasn't just drunken jealousy. It was attempted murder." He was right. Some part of me knew he was right. But accepting it meant accepting that I'd changed since marrying him, that I'd become someone who could rationalize another woman's destruction as necessary. Before I could respond, one of the guards knocked and entered. "Boss, we have a situation." Min-jun's expression shifted instantly, becoming the mask he wore for business. "What kind of situation?" "Yuna's father is here. He's demanding to see his daughter and threatening to involve the police if we don't produce her within the hour." I felt Min-jun's hand tense in mine. Yuna's father. I'd never met him, but I knew his name. Choi Di-young, a legitimate businessman with illegitimate connections, someone who'd been trying to forge an alliance with Min-jun's organization for years. Yuna's relationship with Min-jun had been part of that attempted alliance. "Where is she now?" Min-jun asked. "Secure location, awaiting your instructions." "And he brought how many people?" "6 that we can see, probably more in reserve." Min-jun was silent for a moment, calculating. I could practically see him running through scenarios, weighing outcomes, determining the least bloody path forward. This was the chess player who'd consolidated 3 rival territories before his 30th birthday, the strategist who could see 5 moves ahead of everyone else. "Tell him I'll meet with him in 1 hour. Neutral ground, the restaurant on Gangnam Boulevard. He can bring 3 people, I'll bring 3, and send someone to fetch Prosecutor Kim. I want him present as a witness." The guard nodded and left. Min-jun turned back to me, and I saw exhaustion beneath the calculating exterior. "A prosecutor?" I asked. "Prosecutor Kim owes me his career. More importantly, he's clean enough that his presence will prevent this from becoming a bloodbath. Choi won't try anything stupid with a government official watching." "You're going to negotiate." "I'm going to give him a choice. He backs down and accepts whatever punishment I deem appropriate for his daughter, or I release security footage of her pushing a pregnant woman into a pool and let the court of public opinion destroy his family's reputation. In South Korea, that kind of scandal could ruin his legitimate businesses." It was elegant, actually. No violence required, just the threat of exposure and social destruction. Very Min-jun, finding the pressure point that would make someone yield without him having to draw a weapon. "What if he doesn't care about the scandal?" I asked. "Then we have a problem." Min-jun leaned down and pressed his lips to my forehead. But that's my problem, not yours. You need to rest. Focus on staying calm for the baby. I can't just rest while you're out there negotiating with someone who might want you dead. He doesn't want me dead. He wants his daughter back safely and his dignity intact. I can give him one of those things. He straightened, already transitioning into the role he needed to play. I'll have guards posted at your door. Dr. Kang will check on you every hour. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you tell them immediately. He was almost to the door when I called out, Min-jun, what you said before about there being no middle ground. You found one anyway. He paused, looking back at me. I found a middle ground for Choi De-young's benefit, not Yuna's. What happens to her after this conversation depends entirely on whether her father values her freedom or his pride more. Either way, she'll never be a threat to you again. After he left, I lay in the hospital bed, one hand on my belly, feeling our daughter's movements. She seemed calmer now, the frantic kicking from earlier having subsided. I wondered what kind of world we were bringing her into, what kind of mother I would be in this life I'd chosen. I'd met Min-jun by accident, exactly as Yuna had sneered. He'd walked into my bookstore looking for a first edition of something obscure, and we'd ended up talking for 3 hours about literature and philosophy and whether people could truly change their nature. He'd come back the next day, and the next. It took 2 weeks before he told me what he really did, giving me the chance to walk away. I hadn't walked away. Now, lying in this hospital with guards at my door and my husband off to negotiate the fate of a woman who tried to kill me, I wondered if I should have. If loving Min-jun made me complicit in everything he did, every choice he made, every person who suffered because of decisions traced back to his organization. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your husband thinks he's so clever, but he's forgotten who taught Yuna everything she knows about survival. This isn't over. I stared at the message, ice flooding my veins. Before I could call for the guards, another message appeared. Check your email. You deserve to know the truth about your perfect husband. My hands shook as I opened my email on my phone. There was one new message, no subject line, from an anonymous sender. The body of the email contained a single link. I shouldn't have clicked it. Every instinct screamed at me to call Min-jun, to show this to his security team, to let them handle it. But curiosity, that terrible human curiosity, made my thumb move across the screen. The link opened to a video player. Grainy security footage from what looked like a warehouse. The timestamp showed 3 months ago, 2 months before Min-jun and I had gotten married. The video showed Min-jun and another man I didn't recognize standing over someone tied to a chair. I couldn't make out the words, but I could see Min-jun's expression, cold and remote. Then the other man handed him something, a knife. The video cut off before showing what happened next, but it didn't need to. The implication was clear. My phone buzzed again. Still think you know who you married? I deleted the messages, my fingers moving on autopilot while my mind tried to process what I'd seen. Of course, Min-jun had killed people. I wasn't naive enough to believe otherwise. You didn't become the head of a criminal organization through strongly worded letters and stern negotiations. But seeing it, or almost seeing it, was different from knowing it in the abstract. The question wasn't whether the video was real. The question was who had sent it, and why now. I was still staring at my phone when Dr. Kang entered for his hourly check. He took one look at my face and frowned. Mrs. Park, your blood pressure is elevated. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm just worried about my husband. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes, but he was smart enough not to push. Instead, he adjusted my IV and made notes on his tablet, his movements efficient and practiced. Dr. Kang, I said slowly, how long have you known Min-jun? His hand paused fractionally before continuing. 7 years. Why do you ask? What was he like? Before me, I mean. Dr. Kang set down his tablet and studied me with an expression that was almost paternal. He was maybe 60, with gray threading through his hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen more than his share of difficult situations. He was colder, he said finally, more isolated. He trusted very few people and showed emotion even less. When you came into his life, something shifted. He started making different choices, still ruthless when necessary, but with more consideration for collateral damage. More human, if that makes sense. Did he love Yuna? That's not my place to say. Please, I need to know. Dr. Kang sighed and sat down in the chair beside my bed. He was with her, yes, but love, I don't think Min-jun understood what that word meant until he met you. Yuna was compatible with his lifestyle. She understood the violence and accepted it. Some would say she even encouraged it. You're different. You make him want to be different. What if I can't anymore? The words slipped out before I could stop them. What if I've seen too much, know too much, and I can't be that person who reminds him of his humanity? Then he'll love you anyway, Dr. Kang said simply. Because that's what real love is. Not loving someone because of what they do for you, but loving them for who they are, even when it's difficult. After he left, I lay in the darkness. I'd asked the nurses to dim the lights and tried to sort through my tangled emotions. Fear, anger, confusion, and underneath it all, a stubborn core of love that refused to be extinguished no matter what I learned about the man I'd married. My daughter kicked, a rolling movement that pressed against my ribcage. I placed both hands on my belly and whispered, "Your father is a complicated man, but he loves us. That much I know is true." The door opened, and Min-jun entered. He looked different, older somehow, as if the meeting had aged him years in the span of an hour. He dismissed the guards with a gesture and came to sit beside me, taking my hand without speaking. "How did it go?" I asked. Choi accepted my terms. Yuna will be sent to stay with relatives in Singapore for 2 years. No contact with anyone in Seoul, no access to her father's money beyond basic living expenses. If she returns early or tries to cause trouble, the video goes public and she faces criminal charges. That's almost merciful. Choi begged. Min-jun's voice was flat. He literally got on his knees and begged me to spare his daughter's life. Promised me anything, money, territory, connections. But I could see in his eyes that he knew what she'd done was unforgivable. He was just a father trying to save his child, no matter how much she didn't deserve saving. I heard the subtext underneath his words. Min-jun was going to be a father soon. Would he be the same if our daughter made a terrible mistake? Would he move heaven and earth to protect her, even if she was in the wrong? "Someone sent me a video," I said quietly. His whole body tensed. "What kind of video?" I told him about the messages, about the warehouse footage, about the implied threat behind the timing. I watched his expression cycle through shock, anger, and finally cold calculation. "Let me see your phone." I handed it over, and he studied the deleted messages with an intensity that was almost frightening. His jaw clenched as he watched the video clip. Then he made a call, speaking rapid Korean that was too fast for me to follow with my limited vocabulary. When he hung up, he looked at me with something like regret in his eyes. "The footage is real. That was 3 months ago. The man in the chair had kidnapped and murdered a teenage girl, the daughter of one of my associates. The police weren't going to do anything because he had connections to a rival organization, so I handled it." "You killed him." "Yes." The simple admission hung between us. No justification, no attempt to soften the reality. Just the truth, raw and unvarnished. "And you think that makes you a monster?" I said slowly, reading his expression. "Doesn't it? I think it makes you someone who lives in a world with different rules than the one I grew up in. I think it makes you someone who protects the people under his care, even when the methods are ugly. And I think..." I paused, making sure I meant what I was about to say. "I think the man who killed a murderer 3 months ago is the same man who dove into a pool without hesitation to save his pregnant wife tonight. You contain both of those things, Min-jun. That's the truth I have to accept." He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on my hand. "You should be horrified. You should want nothing to do with me." "Probably, but I'm 7 months pregnant with your child and someone just tried to kill us both, so I think we're past the point of should and shouldn't." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "You're handling this better than I expected." "I'm handling this terribly. I'm just good at pretending." I squeezed his hand. Who sent the video? We're working on tracing it, but I have a theory. The angle of the footage, the timing of the release, it all points to someone inside my organization. Someone who wants to drive a wedge between us, maybe make you leave me or at least weaken my position by causing domestic turmoil. One of your rivals. Or one of my own people who thinks a wife makes me vulnerable. He stood and paced to the window, looking out at the Seoul skyline. There's been tension since I announced my intention to start transitioning some of our operations toward legitimate business. Some of the older members think I'm going soft, that marriage and fatherhood have made me weak. Have they? He turned to face me. Made me weak? No, made me different. Absolutely. I'm more careful now. I think about consequences beyond the immediate situation. I consider what kind of world I'm building for our daughter to grow up in. Is that why you showed Yuna mercy? I showed her mercy because killing her would have started a war that might last years. Years when I want to be home with you and our baby, not managing territorial disputes and revenge killings. The old Min-jun would have killed her anyway and dealt with the consequences. The new Min-jun finds another path. He came back to sit beside me, and I could see the exhaustion in every line of his face. But someone in my organization sees that restraint as weakness, and they're testing me, testing us to see if they can exploit it. What are you going to do? Find them and make an example that reminds everyone why they followed me in the first place. His expression hardened. But first, I'm going to make sure you and our daughter are safe. I'm moving us to the compound in Jeju until after the birth. Full security, no visitors without clearance, complete lockdown. That sounds like a prison. That sounds like the only way I can guarantee nothing happens to you while I deal with this internal threat. He cupped my face in his hands, forcing me to meet his eyes. Jaewon, I need you to understand something. Whoever sent that video isn't trying to inform you or save you. They're trying to isolate you, to make you afraid of me so that when they make their move, you're too confused and scared to know who to trust. I trust you, even after seeing what I'm capable of. Especially after seeing what you're capable of. I covered his hands with mine. Because now I understand the restraint it takes for you to choose mercy when violence would be easier. Now I understand what it costs you to be the man I fell in love with while also being the man your position requires. He kissed me then, soft and desperate, as if I might disappear if he let go. When he pulled back, there were tears in his eyes that he didn't bother to hide. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. We stayed like that for a while, foreheads pressed together, breathing in sync. Outside, Seoul continued its endless motion. Cars on highways, lights in towers, millions of lives intersecting and diverging in patterns too complex to fully comprehend. Somewhere in that vast city, someone was planning their next move against us. Someone who'd sent that video and watched Yuna push me into the pool, seeing opportunity in our crisis. Someone who thought they understood Min-jun's weaknesses but had miscalculated badly. Because they'd forgotten one crucial thing, Min-jun didn't just love me. He'd chosen me, chosen this life of compromise and complicated morality, chosen to be someone better than what he was. And threatening that choice, threatening the future we were building, would unleash something far more dangerous than the cold, isolated man he used to be. It would unleash a man fighting for everything he loved. My phone buzzed one more time. Another message from the anonymous number. Jeju won't save you. There's nowhere he can hide you from what's coming. But I'll give you one chance. Leave him before the baby comes, and I'll make sure you both disappear safely. Stay, and you'll watch everything burn. I showed Min-jun the message. His expression went completely blank, the way it did when he was at his most dangerous. They've just made a critical mistake, he said softly. They've told me they know my plans before I've announced them, which means the leak isn't just someone in my organization, it's someone close enough to hear private conversations. How many people knew about Jeju? 4, my head of security, my second-in-command, Dr. Kang, and... He stopped, his face going pale. And my brother. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Min-jun's younger brother, Tae-hyun, who I'd met only twice, Once at our wedding and once at a family dinner that had been awkward and stilted. Tae-hyun, who'd always lived in Min-jun's shadow, who'd been passed over for leadership despite being blood. "Are you sure?" I asked. "No, but I'm going to find out." He stood, already pulling out his phone. "And if it's true, if my own brother has been working against me, trying to hurt you to weaken my position." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I watched him walk to the door, preparing to step back into the world of violence and betrayal that I'd only glimpsed the edges of. Before he left, he turned back one last time. "Whatever happens, Jaewon, know that everything I do from this moment forward is to protect you and our daughter, even if you don't understand it, even if you hate me for it." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the monitors beeping steadily and our baby moving in my belly and the terrible certainty that the violence was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun.